evening. Thanks again for coming to my Astro Imaging Journey channel. Today I want to go over the Landons Sky time-lapse that you see at the beginning. Back in March, a wonderful little man was born by the name of Landon to my fiance's daughter. And when we got the call that looked like he was going to be born that day or night, I thought to myself, what can I do to commemorate that night? You know, if I was a woodworker, maybe I'd go out and get some wood and carve, you know, something. But since I'm into astro imaging and nightscapes, I decided to go with my talent and capture the night sky. Luckily, it was pretty quiet and cloud free for the most part, so it was a good night. So I set up, and basically what I have here is the setup I had that night. It you know, it's a simple Canon T6i with a 24mm prime lens on a decent tripod, an intervalometer, and that's basically all you need. So to start out, you want to try to get out there in the daytime. You know, like right now, it's about 7:30 at night, so now's the perfect time to get out here and set everything up while it's light out, so you're not having to deal with flashlights or headlamps or anything of that nature. And just get roughly pointed north, in which case this is north over here, so I'm set up like I was that night. This is also a good time that you could do your darks. Normally you would want to do your dark frames after the imaging session when the temperature's down a little bit, your sensor is warmed up, but more to the temperature of the images you took. But for nightscapes, it's not as critical. So you know, we're not zooming right in and going to the pixel level and like we would if we were doing nebula or galaxies or clusters. So since it's a wide field shot, the noise and you know, basically it's not going to go on a 4x6 foot canvas or metal print. You know, it's basically for you know, Facebook, YouTube entry, video intro, things of that nature. So the quality didn't have to be as detailed for some of the other images that I want to start getting into. So so now's the perfect time to do those darks, like I said. You'll want to cover up your viewfinder. There can be some light bleed when the mirror comes up. There'll be a brief split second where light can bleed through your viewfinder and down to your sensor. So you'll want to cover that up. You know, a little bit of tape, be masking tape or electrical tape, blue painter's tape, anything just to block that light, and keep your lens cap on. And when and then set your intervalometer here to do however many shots you want. Make sure you're in manual mode, bulb setting, and what I like to use is 1600 ISO. For this camera, you know, I've done a fair amount of testing and gone in, shot at each ISO for 30 seconds. Excuse me, and then gone into Lightroom, zoomed in to near pixel level, you know, or as far as you can, and then look at the noise levels. And for this particular camera, 800 was pretty clean, 3200 was way too noisy, 1600 was a good mix in between that the dark frames should be able to negate most of that noise, and it allowed for better resolution on the stars. So 1600 is what I've gone with here, and after that, again, manual mode, bulb setting, 1600 ISO. You'll want to go into manual focus. Now the key thing here, if you look on your lens, somewhere there's going to be a focus dial, and it'll have from like 1 meter out to 50 meters, and then your infinite sign. So what you'll want to do is go beyond that top number. So in this case it's at 50 meters, for example. 50 meters is basically from my porch to before my house. So what I like to do is stand on my porch and focus across the street. Once I'm clear in focus on the tripod, that way I can go to a 10x zoom on the viewfinder and make sure everything's perfectly focused. Then I'll put a little bit of blue painter's tape on the focus ring so that it doesn't move. Once I had that set, then I come out here, set it up like you see it, and lastly, I know I'm a little out of order on that, so hopefully, bear with me. The intervalometer. So since we're in bulb mode, this is what's going to control the shutter duration and the timing. Basically, these things are $12-15 on Amazon, and this particular one I can do up to 399 continuous shots for an interval of as low as a second, maybe even lower, up to, who knows, I see hour settings on there, so I'm assuming, but I've never gone over 30 seconds with it. Once we have everything set up, we'll want to go into something, either your head and use the 500 rule, or use an app like PhotoPills. What is the 500 rule, you might be asking? Basically, you want to take your focal length, in this case 24 millimeter, and divide that into the focal, or into 500. That will give you a rough estimate of how long the shutter can be open for pinpoint stars. What I like to do is back off just a hair. Now, part of that problem is the T6i is an APS-C sensor. So that means I have to multiply, because the sensor is smaller than 35 millimeter frame, or a full frame rather, I have to multiply the 24 millimeter times 1.6 and then divide that number into 500. In my particular case, that gets me about 13 seconds. If you use PhotoPills, and I'm going to have hopefully on the side here a screenshot, it's an app that you can get on your phone, and you can go into the spot shot portion of it, and you can, at the top you can see I selected my camera. It has a good database of cameras, and it knows that it's an APS-C and that it needs to multiply by 1.6, and you plug in your focal length and a couple other options that I just left default, frankly, and it automatically tells you so that you don't have to do the math. So we set our duration here, the long, to 13 seconds. Number of exposures, 399, or in this case, since we're doing darks, 20 or 40. Interval, I've tried to go to 0 so that it would just be bang, 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 but for some reason this particular one wants a 1 second delay in between each release of the shutter. And basically, start. So our darks, we would do 20 or 30 or 40, however many you feel were necessary. Lens cap on, tape over your viewfinder, and let it run. And you don't have to do that later at night. Now once it gets dark, that's when we turn around, take your lens cap off, zoom in on a star. Hopefully you're pointed roughly at Polaris. Zoom in on a star, go to 10x zoom, and make sure it's pinpoint. On the viewfinder, it might not be exactly clear for when you go onto live view, so you might have to do a single test. In that particular case, just hold it down, hold down the shutter release for approximately 13 seconds, and then you know, zoom in on the resulting picture. Your stars should be pretty pinpoint, they shouldn't be trailing at all, and your focus should be on. If everything looks good, switch your number of exposures now to however many you want. Maybe you only want 50. In my particular case, I wanted as many as I could, and so I set it to 399, which was the maximum. And then it's basically a set it and forget it. Hit the start button, carefully let it dangle, because you don't want any movement up here, and then just let it run. Okay? Once it's all said and done, we come back out and we clean up. It's as simple as that. Take the memory card out, put it in your computer, or hook the USB cable up to directly to the computer. I've found, especially when you're doing 400 images, it's faster to take the memory card out, put it into the computer, and transfer them that way. Through the USB cable, it's a little bit slower. So with that, I'm not going to actually be doing any of this because I've already done it. One thing I would recommend, and these are tips, and this is something that I found through trial and error, was basically, you take your test shots. You get up there, you take a test shot. Oh, it's, I want Polaris centered. I want that to be the center. It's obviously going to be the center of rotation, but I want it centered in the frame with a little bit of these trees at the bottom. Well, you take a test shot, you're not quite centered, you move it over. Take another test shot, move it over. You finally get it right, and now you're doing your darks. And then you're doing your lights, and you go back to put it on the computer, and oh, well, where was what in these different things? So what I like to do is I like to keep a little headlamp in my pocket or on my head, and when I do my darks, I'll take the lens cap off and just do a quick shine. You could use a regular flashlight. I have a couple other ones. They're 500 lumen though. Will it damage the sensor? No, but do I want to take the risk? No. So it's just a real quick turn the light on, shine it, lens cap off obviously, and that will create a white picture. With that white picture, that is now your delimiter. Everything before that first picture could be a test shot. It could be your darks, whatever sequence you want to shoot those in. After that, in my particular case, were my test shots, getting my framing in there. Once I got where I wanted, do another one, and then turn around. I've got another delimiter frame, a white frame. Everything after that, I know are the lights that I wanted. One thing I did do, which I will show in the video here in a little bit, is light painting. I took my 500 lumen flashlight and basically just did nothing more than pan across the trees in front of the camera. I was hoping that that would create a nice little effect to have the trees illuminated against the black sky. I'll explain a little bit later in the video, but I ended up not using it. As you can see from the intro, they were not illuminated, they were black. So, but with that, I think we're good. I was a little bit out of sync, out of sorts, out of order with some of the steps, but I got all the steps in there. Apologies for the order I gave them to you, but hopefully that it helps you out a little bit, especially that little light trick that has helped me out immensely when I've come to do this stuff. So I'll be back here in a few seconds with the what I did to actually stack the images into the individual frames, as well as a little post-processing in Lightroom to bring out the some of the detail and contrast in that final image. So be back in a few minutes.
Alright, welcome back. So we have captured all of our images in the darks, and now we are ready to stack them and create our trails. So what I have here is I've already sorted all of the images into the darks and lights folders. This was easier to do if you remember. I used the light to create a bright image for one frame. That was the delimiter, which made it easier to say, okay, between this extremely bright image and the next one, those are my darks, and then everything after that one are all my lights. Everything before the first one are all the test shots, and I can delete those. So once I got those in there, I transferred those over to the darks and the lights. If you noticed, I labeled them raw. That way I know that they are in fact the original files, and then eventually they will be into the processed. So if you look in here, what I like to do is put the focal length of the lens, the f-stop I was using, the ISO, and the exposure. Should have on here also T6i. So I will the camera model, which I will update that later after this video is done. And as you can see, here is all my dark frames. Now, one thing I would like to notice or explain to you is, let's look at the details. If you notice, each one of these files is 24 meg. My C drive is an SSD. If you happen to have, and then also my E drive is a standard HDD. Platter, spinning, a little bit slower. The SSD will run a little bit faster, actually a lot bit faster, and will allow this to happen much quicker. So if you have multiple hard drives, I suggest Googling hard drive speed test, and then go and figure out which hard drive is your fastest, whether it's an HDD or an SSD, and make sure that you're working off of your fastest drive, and then things will go a lot quicker for you. So let's go back and also look at our light frames, and they look kind of dark here, but if you actually go in, it's actually pretty light. So this was the first one that I did, where I did some light painting right to try to get the detail in the trees, but in the end I'm not going to use it simply because it really didn't add too much to the final image. So it was winter, early spring, so leaves weren't on the trees. If it was leaves and we could get a nice contrast between the dark sky and the nice green leafy trees, then maybe I would have, but this just didn't add. So, but I'm keeping it there simply because I like to keep all my data. Another recommendation I would have is off-site storage. In this case, I have a NAS here, and I can go into my Astro Imaging 2018, and they're all right there. I like to keep everything up there as well as on the local drive. That way, if anything happens to any of these files, I have a backup that I can go and work off of. And then also, if anything happens in the future and I want to go back, especially for the astro images where you don't have the foreground like we have with the nightscapes and the star trails, then it helps to you have more data that you can pull from in the end. So let's get to it. So we have our darks, we have our lights, and what we need to do is we need to do a little correction. So what we're going to do is go over here to Lightroom, and let me get out of here. So here's my library. I'm going to navigate to the C drive. Let's go to import. Astro imaging, Landons Sky, raw darks. All of them are checked just to be safe. I always like to double check and click all, or excuse me, check all, and then click import. Now, if you notice, this import bar went very quickly. Again, that's based off of that being on the SSD. If I was running off of the HDD, it would have taken 3 to 6 times longer based on the testing I did. So now that we're in here, we'll just select the first one, go over here to develop, and then all we do here is a simple come down here, lens correction, enable profile corrections. It auto-populates. Then we come all the way down here, select that image, Control A on Windows. I'm not sure what it is on Mac. We have everything highlighted now. Do a sync. Leave everything the way it is. Synchronize. Progress bar was up there. Everything is complete. Now we can select any of the images again. Just right click on one of them with all of them selected. Go to export. Export. And then fill out the information here. So we're going to go into a specific folder. I'm not going to be doing this here because I already have them to save time. But as you can see, we can go in and choose our directory, Astro Imaging, Landon Sky, Process Darks, and we can put them in there. Now, the key thing here, it defaults to JPEG. Use TIFF. No compression, 16-bit. This will allow you to do better post-processing once everything's stacked and the trails are done. So if you use JPEG, you're going to lose a little bit of the detail. It's going to be a little harder to process. You won't be able to do as much with it. So I'm going to cancel this since I've already done it. And we will go back and just go back in here. So obviously I'm not doing this right now, but if I wanted to, I could do a remove, don't delete from disk, just do a remove from the library, go back to import. This time we're going to do the lights and check them all again and do the same thing with these, just the lens correction. That helps flatten that field and get things so that they can be lined up a little bit better. So we're going to close this out without importing, and we're going to move on to actually doing all the stacking. So what we like to use here is StarStacks. It's pretty simple to use, free. We have all the darks and lights process, so let's open our images. Let's go down to process lights. Control A. Now to select them all. Now there's 400 in here. I'm going to deselect, so I'm going to hold the Control key down, click that first one. That was our one with the light painting. I do not want to use that one. Let's go ahead and open all of those. They're all selected. Let's just make sure. Yes. Okay. Now we're going to come up here and do our dark frames. So same thing, come up, process darks, Control A, and open. Come down, here's our dark images, and we're good. So now we're going to come over here. This is all going to be personal preference. So what you're going to do is you have a, as you can see, you have a flyover, or a flyout rather, telling you what each one is capable of doing. Personally, I like the gap filling, comment mode, longer trails, subtract the dark images, that helps take some of the noise out. This I find key, this cumulative image saving, save after each step. I like to select that. Again, select a TIFF, image starting at 0, and the output folder. In this particular case, if you notice, I have the Star Trails folder also created, and time-lapse save. Select that folder. Again, now you can use whatever structure you want to use. This helps me stay a little bit more organized for the way I like to do things. Let's come over to images. I don't play with this too much, but again, do what you need to do. Get in here, play around with these things, and see what works best for you. Now, if you notice, start processing is the fourth icon. Why that is, I have no idea. And then your save as is your third. You would think the processing would be the third and save as would be your fourth, but it is what it is. So what we're going to do, go ahead, start processing. And you can see down here it's going through the dark frames, it's figuring out what the average noise is, figuring out what it needs to do to remove from the images up here. Excuse me, remove the noise from the images as it's processing each image. So I'm going to speed up this video a little bit while it's doing its thing so that you can still watch while what this is going. Excuse me, watch what it's doing. As you can see, it says it's blending, and you can start to see the trails start to form. You'll see the clouds, they are getting kind of fainter as each one. It's averaging them out, and if those clouds have moved, now you've got darker sky for the next 30 frames. That's just going to get lighter and lighter. If stuff moves in, it's going to get darker and darker, and this down here will get lighter and lighter as the clouds move in. You can see we have a plane come across, and it'll go out of frame, and eventually, as more and more these get stacked, that will eventually get averaged out. And this right here is one of the key reasons why I like to do the image save after each step, because the final image may have a trail through here. 3 images before, no trail, no plane trail, and end up being the one that you wanted to use. So you can always go back and step back through and figure out which one you wanted. Maybe the way they ended you didn't quite like, but something in the middle was much better. So that's one of the reasons why I like to use that. And in addition, another side benefit of doing that is if you've watched any of my videos, including this one, you'll notice that this here is the intro, the time lapse. So I was able to take all of these into Lightroom, create that time-lapse video, and then use that in Premiere as my intro video. So it's got several benefits, but you might not want to do that. That's entirely up to you, and that's okay. Whatever works for you to create the images you want is perfectly fine by me. Now, as you can see here, that plain trail that it was up there earlier is now gone. It's been averaged out. But we have some more down here. Those will get averaged out in time as well. But given the direction I'm shooting, DC is up in this area. So it's we've got Dulles Airport, Reagan National. So there's a lot of air traffic in the area. So it is what it is. Again, they'll get averaged out. We'll get a few frames that there won't be any trails, any airline trails, and we'll be able to use those for whatever we want to use them as. Something else you might notice as it's going down, when it gets to the next one, it shifts down, so the scroll bar is slowly moving down as each one is processed. We know that somewhere in here is where it transfers over to the dark frame library. So we know that right now we're right about 50% done. Gives you a good idea, or if you happen to remember how many there were, you can do a little math in your head. I said 50. Guessing we're closer to 30, about a third of the way through. I know that I had 400 frames minus that first one, so 399. We're at 3130. So that's about 130, 132, 133 in now. So we're a little over a quarter of the way through. All right, as you can see, we're getting close to that 400 number. We have one little trail right here. That's an artifact. And one coming through right here. If nothing else comes through, which it looks like something just did, that would have been almost perfect. To have some clouds out there that, if we were going to be going out there to do a perfect night sky, this would not have been the night to do it. And definitely would have taken more than 400 shots. Would have been out there all night long, just capturing images, filling up the card, maybe transferring in between sets, maybe even using Backyard EOS to just take a couple thousand shots, one right after the other. That one might not be so good now that I think about it, simply because it downloads from the camera after every shot, so it'd be longer than a 1 second delay in between the shots. So that maybe that wasn't a good idea. But hey, that's that's why part of what I'm doing with this channel is, if you make a mistake, own it, describe it, and what you learn from it. So here's the final image. We can go in here and play with it if this was the actual final image and we didn't have these trails in here. See what it does. Doesn't seem to be doing too much. And let's just say, for sake of argument, that was the image I wanted to go with. We'll come up here, do a save as, navigate down to our directory, and again, let's do a TIFF. And we will just leave that just the way it is. And click Save. And at this point, we can pretty much say we're done with star stacks. We have all of the images, all of the trails, so let's go back over there and take a look at that. We have all our time-lapse saves. And if we just randomly come down to any image, we can see that, yep, we do have them. They're nice and trailed. We do have some artifacts. So this would be one of those ones where we just have to step through, take a look. Okay, not going to step through too many, but we know that that one has a trail. I can see the trail here. So would have to just kind of randomly come down. Look, I can see some trails through here. So these are probably not good to use. Or I could just go through each individual one like I was doing earlier. Use the arrow keys and just see if it's not advancing for some reason. But regardless, I would probably pull these into Lightroom, look at them individually, and like we did before, where we went down to the bottom, right, and selected all, we could remove them individually and narrow that down to a field of good candidates. So I'm going to stop the video right now. Okay, so I know I promised that we'd go into Lightroom and I'd show you a little bit of the processing there. Apologies, I spaced, I forgot to record it. So basically I just used the basic sliders, exposure, highlights, shadows, saturation, contrast, and noise reduction. That got us to the image we have here. Basically, that's all personal preference. I wanted to tone down the brightness of the stars, bring out a little bit more color in them to make it a little bit more unique. And then I saved it as a JPEG. With the JPEG, I was then able to upload that to Walmart Photo Center and play around with the canvas. Now, the canvas is a 4:3 ratio. The image is a 3:2. So it's not the same aspect ratio between the two. So that's why the Landons Sky logo isn't in the lower left-hand corner. It's more to the right. Basically, I shifted the image around on the canvas preview in the photo center and then got it to where I like the composition, I like the placement, and then gave myself a little mental image, a mental grid of where I wanted the logo to go. Back and forth between Lightroom, make that little logo, position it, save it, put it back into Photo Center, check it. Was it where I wanted it to be? No. Okay. Readjust, save, rinse and repeat until I got it the way I wanted it. Printed out a couple canvases. We have one here at our house, and the other one was given to Landon's mother, and uh, as a housewarming gift and as a present to Landon. And yeah, they really seem to like it. So um, at this point, I will be showing you a screenshot of the canvas we gave Tara. She gave us a shout out in the her video. I'll link that in the description. And she really seemed to appreciate the gesture and the effort. I couldn't be happier for her. And last but not least, let's meet the little guy that inspired this little project. Here we have Landon. He's only a few weeks old at this point, but when this picture was taken, by the time I got to editing this video, he's now a couple months old. But yeah, can't wait to see what this little guy grows up to be. His parents are loving, dedicated. Couldn't be happier for him. So um, with that, I'm going to say good night, clear skies. Please hit that like button, subscribe if you like what I'm doing, and hit the bell if you want to get notified. And with that, until next time, clear skies.